My wife stole our kids and emptied our lives. I filmed their abuse, crushed the cheaters with Ruthless, revenge, won custody, and took my life back. I never thought I'd become the kind of man who could look back on a year of pure rage and call it worth it, but here I am. We had built a life together, 12 years, 2 kids, countless holidays, even a second-hand dining table from our first move-in. I thought it was real. That morning she looked like a gambler caught cheating, tense, clutching her phone like a secret. I could have confronted her right then, but after an all-night shift I told myself I'd gather proof first. A quiet part of me wanted revenge. It wouldn't stay quiet for long. I watched as she drifted further, always texting, whispering in the pantry, work call, just Kareem. But I saw the grin. I checked our bank statements, late-night restaurant bills, men's clothing that never showed up in my closet. The evidence piled up. We had 2 kids, Emma, 10, and Lucas, 8, bright, curious, full of life. I worked nonstop to give them a better future, moving us to a decent home, better schools. Maybe that was my mistake, working so hard I didn't see my marriage rotting beneath me. I thought Sabrina was close to her brother Kareem. He always had something to say, calling me a blue-collar nobody who wasn't sophisticated enough for her. He bragged about big deals that never happened, borrowed money he never repaid, and flaunted his leased BMW. About 4 months ago, Sabrina's bonding nights with Kareem became routine, but receipts and phone records revealed another name, Grayson, her clean-cut co-worker, an accountant, polished, the kind of guy who smelled like expensive aftershave. My blood simmered. Then came the day everything changed. I went to buy materials for work. My card was declined. Another card, declined. A call to the bank hit me like a freight train. Our accounts were empty. Even the kids' college fund was drained. That morning I raced home, dread twisting my stomach. I already knew who I'd find. Kareem stood smug in the driveway. Sabrina, phone in hand, directed movers as they hauled away boxes, furniture, even the kids' books. She spotted me and sneered. "You're a failure. I'm taking the kids and all our money. I deserve better than some broke construction grunt." I glanced at Kareem, who tossed me a poisonous smirk and dropped a box of my kids' belongings in his trunk. "Worthless bum," he sneered. "Sabrina's done with your sorry act. Don't even think about stopping her, or we'll have you arrested for harassment." For a moment, my vision blurred with rage. Memories of coming home late, of Sabrina ignoring me while she texted Grayson, flickered in my mind. I remembered how she used to look at me when we first got married, how proud she was that I could fix any problem around the house. That was gone now, replaced by scorn. "You want a real show? Fine," she spat. "I'm done pretending you have any place in our lives. I've got a lawyer, I've got full custody in the bag, and I've already drained every account. You have nothing." I should have stormed up the porch, demanded my kids. But some twisted calm overcame me instead. Fury glowed hot in my chest, but I realized you can't always lash out blindly if you want to truly ruin someone. Sometimes you have to let them keep thinking they've already beaten you. So I stepped back, reached for my phone, and began filming. Kareem's eyes bulged. "What are you doing, you idiot? Stop filming." He picked up a baseball bat, who keeps a bat in their luxury car anyway, and strutted toward my truck. I kept the phone aimed at him. He bared his teeth in a grin that was anything but friendly. "Oh, you want a show? Here's your damn show." He swung the bat at my truck's headlights. Glass shattered. He kept going, leaving a vicious dent in the side panel. My phone caught every second, every swing, every jagged grin of satisfaction on his face. "Keep going," I said, nice and clear for the camera. "That's thousands of dollars in damage now, maybe more. You're really making a case for yourselves." Sabrina's eyes went wide. "Stop, Kareem. He's filming you." He let the bat fall from his hands as if it scorched his palms, then hissed at me under his breath. I shrugged, ended the recording, and stuffed my phone into my pocket. "I guess that's enough for now," I said calmly. "By the way, Sabrina, I hope you enjoy sifting through all the trouble you've caused." Without another word, I walked inside, grabbed the important documents I'd hidden. Birth certificates, business records, anything that might help me later, and left them in a safe spot. Sabrina was still screaming when I walked back out, but I ignored her, hopped into my battered truck and drove away. That night, I stayed in a rundown motel by the interstate, stinking of stale cigarettes and regret. I stared at the flickering neon sign outside my window, thinking of how easily Sabrina had gutted our joint life. But I wasn't down for the count. I started calling in favors and quietly sorting out what was left of my finances. My personal business accounts, the ones Sabrina had tried to access, were locked down. She drained what she could, but enough threads remained intact to keep me afloat. A few days later, I discovered something that lit the match of vengeance inside me. Sabrina wasn't just sleeping with his coworker Grayson. She had grand plans to move in with him, potentially marry him once the divorce was done. He was prancing around the office telling everyone Sabrina had finally left her caveman husband. They thought I was out of the picture, a worthless shadow who wouldn't fight back. They were dead wrong. Over the next week, I put on the mask of a broken man who accepted defeat. My truck was still operational, though the front was bashed in. I used it to quietly move into a small apartment not far from Emma and Lucas's new school. Whenever Sabrina called to gloat or just to threaten me, I acted desperate, apologetic. She lapped it up, going on about how she deserved a better man, how I was a nobody. I recorded her rants whenever I could. Eventually, I found out Grayson's daily routine from a mutual acquaintance. He left work around 5:30 p.m., usually drove straight to some upscale gym. Sabrina would meet him there sometimes, or at his place later. This was all I needed to plan the next step in my revenge. One evening, my phone buzzed, an unknown number. I answered, heart pounding, only to hear Emma's trembling voice on the other end. "Dad?" she whimpered. "Mom's at Uncle Kareem's. She said I can't come visit you anymore, but I want to. I really miss—" I heard a click, then a dial tone. She'd been cut off. White-hot fury coursed through me. That was it. They wanted a war. They were going to get one. Because if there's one thing you don't do, it's use my children as pawns in your twisted little game. I called my friend Russell, a big man with a temper to match. We'd grown up together, and he owed me for saving him from some legal trouble a while back. Russell had a cousin, a construction foreman, who managed heavy machinery at sites across the county. The moment Russell heard what Sabrina and Kareem were doing, alienating me from my own kids, draining my accounts, and humiliating me, he asked just one question: when do we start? I told him the plan as it was forming in my mind. It wasn't elegant, but it would be undeniably clear to everyone involved that I wasn't to be trifled with. The next night, Russell and I met near an abandoned lot where some heavy machinery was stored behind a chain-link fence. Russell's cousin was there, looking the other way for an evening. We found exactly what we needed, a battered old bulldozer. It roared like a beast when Russell turned the ignition key. I felt my pulse thunder in my ears. Days passed, and I meticulously watched Grayson. I wanted him alone, without Sabrina or any innocent bystanders. Finally, one Friday evening, I saw him pull out of the office parking lot in his pristine silver sedan. I followed at a discreet distance. Just before we reached a remote patch of road under a half-finished overpass, Russell texted me, in position. Grayson slowed at a traffic light that seemed stuck on red. Perfect. I accelerated, cutting in front to block him. My battered truck squealed in protest. Grayson slammed on his brakes, honking his horn. What the hell? I heard him shout through the open window as I hopped out of my truck. He recognized me immediately. Are you crazy? Get out of the way." His eyes darted around as though searching for an exit. I stepped forward, calm as death. "Step out of the car, Grayson." He hesitated, gripping the steering wheel. "You're insane. I'm calling the cops." "Go ahead," I said, sliding a small baseball bat out from behind my back. "I'll be done before they show up." That was when Russell rumbled up behind Grayson's sedan and the bulldozer. The heavy machinery growled, hydraulic parts groaning as he angled the massive shovel blade right at the trunk of Grayson's car. Grayson's eyes went wide with panic. "What the—" The bulldozer's metal edge crunched the trunk on the first push, twisting metal screeching in the otherwise quiet night. Grayson fumbled for his seatbelt. He practically fell out of his car, stumbling onto the road. He spun around, arms up as if to ward off the monstrous machine. "You can't do this," he shouted, voice cracking. I gripped his collar. "You see how it feels when someone rips apart everything you've worked for?" He tried to pry my hand away, but I was fueled by a year of betrayal. "Let go of me." The bulldozer engine revved again. Russell expertly manipulated the controls so the blade pressed down, peeling the side panel of Grayson's car with an ear-splitting shriek. The window shattered, glass raining onto the asphalt. "Stop it! You're insane!" Grayson's voice rose in desperation. I tightened my hold on his shirt, yanking him closer so we were face to face. "You must feel pretty proud. You got Sabrina. You took my money. You think you won, right? She told me you were an abusive nobody, he gasped, eyes wild. It wasn't personal. Wasn't personal? My laugh was cold. You messed with my kids. You let her drain all our accounts, and you call that not personal? I slammed him against the side of my truck. He tried to fight back, landing a poorly aimed punch on my shoulder. Adrenaline roared in my veins. I swung the bat, connecting with his side. He doubled over, gasping in pain, eyes shining with tears. My heart hammered, but I felt unstoppable. Russell moved the bulldozer again, ramming the back of Grayson's car. The frame collapsed like a tin can. I'll pay you back, Grayson stammered. I swear to God, I'll give you anything you want, money, an apology, anything. I snarled in his ear. I don't want your money. I want you to remember this moment every time you think you can stomp all over someone's life again. He tried to speak, but instead coughed, spitting up saliva. My bat hovered near his ribs, a silent threat. Then I gave a short nod to Russell. The bulldozer roared forward, ripping the rest of the sedan's side until the car's wheels canted at bizarre angles. Metal screeched in protest. Glass and torn steel littered the street. I leaned in. You messed with the wrong man. Before he could utter another word, I heaved him onto the pavement. He landed hard, his face contorted with pain as he struggled to crawl away from the wreckage of his precious car. For a moment, I considered pushing this further, crushing more than just his car, but I pulled back, let him limp away. Fear can be a stronger weapon than any broken bone. Russell backed the bulldozer off the destroyed sedan, leaving it in a twisted, smoking heap. Then he hopped down, gave me a sharp nod, and we returned to our vehicles. Grayson lay whimpering in the road behind us, the distant glow of streetlights illuminating his destroyed property. Police sirens wailed from far off, but we were already fading into the night. By the time word got back to Sabrina, we had vanished. She had no idea who'd helped me or how it all went down. The story in the rumor mill was that a bulldozer had come out of nowhere, but everyone in her circle knew it was me. Maybe they couldn't prove it, but they knew. I half expected Sabrina to call me in a hysterical rage, but the line stayed silent until the next day when my phone finally rang. Her voice was cold as ice. You maniac, she hissed. You're not going to get away with this. Grayson's pressing charges. The cops are going to come knocking any minute. I let out a slow breath. I have no idea what you're talking about. I was home last night, alone. She laughed, but it was hollow. Don't think I won't destroy you for this. My lawyer will have a field day. You crossed a line. I clenched my jaw, imagining how she looked, probably pacing her new condo with a phone in hand, nails digging into her palm. A line? I think you crossed that line when you took my kid's college fund. You're a total failure, she spat. I should have left you years ago. The phone clicked. I stared at the empty screen, my heart still pounding, euphoria mingling with fear. There'd be a price to pay for what I'd done, but I found it hard to regret. Not yet. Trouble arrived soon enough. A detective came by my apartment with a few pointed questions. Sure, there was footage of a bulldozer on that deserted road, but the driver wore a hooded jacket, face obscured, and the license plates on my truck were conveniently covered with duct tape. My neighbors told him I'd been in all night. Some even testified they saw me take out the trash around 9 p.m. That was enough to muddy the waters, especially since Grayson was too rattled to clearly identify me. It seemed Russell's cousin had also wiped down the bulldozer. No prints, no evidence, no case so far. While the legal side simmered, I had another front to address. My kids. Sabrina had them in her new condo, but I filed for an emergency hearing. I presented bank statements proving that Sabrina had wiped out our accounts, plus videos of her brother smashing my truck. The judge was no fool. He knew something shady was going on, and although he couldn't confirm the bulldozer incident, he saw that Sabrina wasn't exactly parent of the year. Tensions escalated when I told the court that Sabrina used the children as leverage to hurt me. She tried to wave that off as a lie. He's an abusive man, Your Honor. I had no choice but to protect my children from his violent outbursts. Louise, my lawyer, calmly slid evidence across the table. My phone recordings of Sabrina calling me worthless, bragging about taking the kids and draining the accounts. The judge's eyebrows rose. The final blow was a short statement from Emma's teacher, describing how Emma had seemed distressed, complaining that Mommy won't let me see Daddy. By the time the hearing ended, I had partial custody, a major step up from the 0 Sabrina had planned for me. Sabrina glared daggers at me in the courthouse hallway. This isn't over, she snapped, her fists clenched. I'll make sure you regret everything you've done. I just shrugged. You started this war. I'm just fighting back. Once I had more time with the kids, I tried to keep them out of the crossfire. When they were with me, I took them to local parks, taught them how to do basic home repair. Emma played soccer in the evenings, and I never missed a practice. Lucas liked building elaborate Lego sets, and I helped him construct a dinosaur robot that we both found ridiculously cool. I wanted them to have some semblance of normalcy, some stability. Yet Sabrina's arrogance didn't die. She threw parties in her condo, living off the money she'd scraped from our accounts. She must have felt untouchable, even though the courts already smelled blood in the water. Grayson, according to rumor, was halfway out the door. Ever since the bulldozer incident, he'd been a nervous wreck, probably cursing the day he got involved with Sabrina. But she refused to see it. She was determined that I would bend the knee, or else. Then came the day Kareem tried to ambush me at my job site. I was installing custom cabinetry in a nearly finished home when he strolled in wearing sunglasses, presumably to mask the bruise under his eye. Someone must have clocked him recently. He made a big show of strolling around, insulting the craftsmanship. "Cheap wood," he said loudly, tapping on the cabinets. "If you're going to sabotage my sister's life, at least do it with better quality, right?" I exhaled slowly, wiped my hands on a rag, and turned to face him. "You shouldn't be here." He stepped forward until we were nearly nose to nose. "You think I'm just going to let you humiliate my sister and get away with it?" My coworker Toby was in the next room. I saw him peek around the corner, alarmed. I gave him a short nod, letting him know I had this covered. "You're the one who destroyed my truck," I reminded Kareem in a calm voice, "and I still have the video." He shrugged, a twisted smirk forming. "You think I care? I've got a dozen ways to bury you if you show that to the police." "Sure," I said, letting sarcasm drip from my tone. "Because you're such a successful businessman. What was your last fiasco, the luxury vape lounge that never opened?" His hand shot out to shove me in the chest, but I stood my ground. He was tall, but he had the wiry build of someone who rarely did real labor. I spent my days hauling planks of wood and buckets of cement. He was nothing to me. "Don't you dare talk about my business," he spat. "Stay away from my sister. She's going to take everything from you, and you'll be left crying in a gutter." I laughed quietly, the sound bouncing off the unfinished walls. "Let her try. You have no idea what you two are in for." Kareem's jaw tightened, but he backed off. "This isn't over," he said, echoing Sabrina's words. "I'll make sure you regret crossing us." Then he left, slamming the door so hard it rattled the hinges. Toby emerged from the other room, concern etched on his face. "That was Sabrina's brother?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, he's harmless, mostly hot air." "Sure didn't look harmless," Toby muttered. "But he let it go." Deep inside, I felt the coil of vengeance twist tighter. Kareem was always popping up in the worst places, spewing threats as if it were second nature. Maybe it was time to properly put the fear of God in him too. But I decided to bide my time. I wanted my next move to be devastating. 2 weeks later, after more legal back and forth, Sabrina tried to block me from seeing the kids again, claiming I was unstable. When I produced the custody agreement for the local precinct, the officers told me I had every right to pick them up at the designated time. That night, I went to her condo. She opened the door a crack, glaring at me through the chain. "Go away," she snapped. "My kids are scheduled to be with me tonight," I replied calmly, though anger churned in my gut. She barked a humorless laugh. "They don't want to see you." I raised an eyebrow, trying to peer around the door. I heard movement inside, soft footsteps, likely Emma or Lucas. "You're alienating them again." She ignored that, leaning closer so her face nearly pressed against the gap. "You think you're so clever with all your tough guy theatrics? Everyone knows you destroyed Grayson's car. They're just waiting for proof." I sighed. "Sabrina, open the door now. Make me." That was when her phone rang, and she glanced down to see who was calling. Her moment of distraction was all I needed. I shoved the door hard, snapping the chain. She stumbled back with a gasp. Inside, the living room was littered with half-empty wine bottles, clothes strewn about. The stench of stale alcohol coated the air. My kids were nowhere in sight. "Where are Emma and Lucas?" I demanded. She pointed toward their bedroom door. "You'll regret breaking into my condo like this." I stepped over the threshold, forcing down the anger that threatened to make me do something reckless. "Kids, it's Dad." Lucas peeked out first, wide-eyed. Emma followed, her face pale with worry. They rushed into my arms. Mom said we couldn't go with you anymore, Emma whispered, tears welling in her eyes. She said you got violent, but you're not violent, Dad. I felt something snap inside me. I glared at Sabrina. Pack your bags, kids. You're coming with me tonight. Sabrina balled her fists. No, they're not. I forbid it. I stood my ground. We have a court order. You want to call the cops? Go ahead. Do it. We'll see who they side with when they see all this. I gestured to the squalid living room. Go on. Make the call. She wavered, rage contorting her features, but she didn't pick up the phone. She just seethed, watching as the kids hurried to stuff clothes and favorite toys into their small backpacks. When they were ready, I took each of them by the hand. Sabrina followed us to the hallway, shouting curses. I shut the door in her face without looking back. A few nights after that, with Emma and Lucas safely asleep in my apartment, I heard from Russell again. He'd caught wind that Kareem planned to intercept me on my route to a late-night job at a different site. Something about wanting to teach me a lesson. My heartbeat quickened at the thought. If Kareem wanted to escalate, so be it. I arranged for a friend to babysit Emma and Lucas, then set off in my battered truck. Sure enough, around 9 p.m., I spotted Kareem's BMW tailing me at a distance. I smiled grimly. This was exactly what I'd been expecting. I turned down a quiet stretch of road near a scrapyard, the same place Russell had access to heavy machinery. The silhouette of a backhoe loomed in the flicker of an old street lamp. Kareem gunned his engine, headlights shining in my mirrors. I stopped the truck, got out, and waited. Kareem's car screeched to a halt. He emerged, baseball bat in hand, echoing that day he destroyed my headlights. A couple of his shady buddies slid out from the back seat, flanking him. He pounded the bat in his palm. Took you long enough to stop, he said. It's time we finish this. I couldn't agree more, I said quietly, heart thumping in my chest. I glanced to the side. Russell stepped from the shadows. We'd planned this. He held no weapon, he didn't need one. The man was built like a bull, fists like sledgehammers. Kareem's goons shifted uncertainly, but Kareem sneered at Russell, clearly unafraid, yet. Oh, so you brought muscle, he taunted. This just makes it more fun. I locked eyes with Kareem. You and Sabrina took my money, tried to take my kids, humiliated me. You thought I'd just slink away and give up. You thought wrong. Boo-hoo, Kareem mocked. We took what we deserved. You're just mad because you're a loser with no power. But guess what? You're still a loser. You can't scare me. I let that hang in the air for a second, then calmly unlatched the tailgate of my truck. Inside was a crowbar. I wrapped my fingers around it and stared at Kareem. I'm no hero. I'm not even a good man. But I promise you'll regret thinking I'm an easy target. His smirk wavered, but he raised the bat. One of his buddies rushed forward, swinging a metal pipe. Russell intercepted him with a savage punch that sent him staggering to the ground. The second buddy tried to tackle me, but I brought up the crowbar, catching him in the ribs. He yelped and doubled over. Kareem rushed in, baseball bat whistling toward my shoulder. I pivoted, wincing as it grazed my arm. Pain flared, but adrenaline kept me going. I swung the crowbar at his wrist. He yelped. The bat fell from his grasp. Russell was busy keeping the other two thugs on the ground, methodically disabling them with powerful blows. Kareem stumbled back, cursing. I pressed forward, grabbing him by the shirt collar. My voice shook with rage. You think you're tough swinging that bat at my truck? Let's see how tough you really are without your weapon. He tried to jab me in the stomach, so I slammed the crowbar into his thigh. He yowled like a wounded animal, collapsing to one knee. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He glared up at me, hatred burning in his eyes. You'll pay for this, he hissed, spitting at my feet. I already have, I said, thanks to you and Sabrina. Then I swung one final punch, connecting with his jaw. He toppled onto the cracked asphalt. Russell towered over the other two, who were groaning and clutching bruised limbs. As soon as I'd put Kareem on the ground, they decided they'd had enough. One of them half crawled, half sprinted to the BMW. The other hobbled after him. They peeled away, leaving Kareem where he lay. For a moment I considered leaving him there, but a deeper, more poisonous urge roared inside me. I strode to his BMW, popped open the trunk, and rummaged until I found a small toolkit. Among the tools was a reciprocating saw, probably stored for intimidation. How ironic. I yanked it out and glared at Russell. He nodded grimly. Go for it. We wheeled on Kareem's car. I ignited the saw, the blade whined. Sparks flew as I hacked into the side panel, letting out all my frustrations with every inch of ruined metal. The sweet reek of scorched paint and shredded steel filled the air. By the time I was done, a gaping wound marred the side of Kareem's precious BMW. Kareem, bruised and bleeding, propped himself up on his elbows, watching in horror. Stop. Stop. I let the saw whine to a halt, then turned to face him. Next time, I said, voice low, I won't stop with the car. His eyes flickered with genuine fear. Russell threw down the battered metal pipe he'd confiscated from one of Kareem's buddies, and the clang reverberated in the night. Satisfied, I jerked my head, signaling Russell it was time to leave. We climbed back into my truck and drove away. In the rearview mirror, Kareem was on his hands and knees next to the gutted remains of his vehicle. I doubted he'd run his mouth again for a good long while. Sabrina tried to spin the story when she found out, claiming I was a sociopath who destroyed poor Kareem's car. But with Kareem in the hospital for a hairline fracture in his wrist and a nasty bruise on his face, not to mention the prior recordings of him trashing my truck, the cops were more inclined to see it as a mutual escalation. My lawyer, Louise, was already in the process of negotiating final custody arrangements. Turns out the judge had grown weary of Sabrina's antics, lying about finances, alienating the children, hosting parties with random men. Every time she tried to paint me as the villain, I had evidence that swung back in my favor. The day we finalized the divorce was anticlimactic, just a short hearing where the judge officially declared our marriage dissolved. Sabrina arrived in a wrinkled blouse, dark circles under her eyes, as if life had worn her out. Gone was the fancy makeup, the expensive clothes. She tried to meet my gaze with bravado, but I saw the flicker of defeat behind her anger. We could have sorted this out, I said, just loud enough for her to hear, if you hadn't tried to take everything. She let out a bitter laugh. You deserved it. You're a nobody. I shrugged. Maybe so. But at least I'm not the one who lost everything. Her lip curled. Don't think you've won. You're still broke. I've got something you can never buy back, I said, nodding toward the kids who waited in the hallway with a social worker. Their respect, and mine. She tried to retort, but the bailiff signaled for quiet. The judge read the final terms. I had primary custody. Sabrina had limited visitation. The division of property gave me the right to any personal business accounts, meaning everything she drained had to be reimbursed. She was stuck with the debt from the credit cards she had secretly opened in my name, once proven to be fraudulent on her part. The child support arrangement was humiliating for her, especially since she'd used the kids as pawns. The last words from the judge were final. The marriage is dissolved. There is no longer any shared financial obligation beyond what is ordered in the settlement. Sabrina didn't cry, didn't beg. She just stared straight ahead, as if refusing to acknowledge reality. I walked out, my footsteps heavy, but a strange sense of relief blooming in my chest. 12 years reduced to a stack of legal papers and bitter memories, yet for the first time in a long while, I felt free. I took Emma and Lucas to the diner down the street for celebratory milkshakes. It was a small gesture, but one that reminded me we still had something to look forward to. Life wouldn't be easy. My arm was still sore from where Kareem whacked me with that bat. My truck was a dented testament to all that had happened, and my finances were precarious. But I had a fresh start, in a way that was worth every bruise, every betrayal. As we sipped our milkshakes, Emma rested her head on my shoulder. "Are you happy, Dad?" she asked softly. I hesitated, uncertain how to answer. Happy felt too strong a word for everything we'd been through. "I'm okay," I said at last, patting her hair. "And I'll be a lot better soon." Lucas gave me a wide-eyed look. "Mom said you're a bad guy." A lump formed in my throat. "Sometimes, buddy, people do bad things when they're hurt. I'm not perfect. But everything I did was to protect you two." Emma reached across the table and put her hand on top of mine. "We know," she whispered. In that moment, I realized something. No matter how brutal and vengeful I'd become, no matter how twisted with anger I felt, Emma and Lucas were the anchors keeping me from sinking into total darkness. Their small hands, their unwavering trust, that was all I needed to keep going. Kareem's threats eventually dried up. Grayson, humiliated by the bulldozer incident, left the state to seek a new job far away. Sabrina, cut off from the money train, had to move to a smaller apartment and take a job she hated. In time, the gossip died down, replaced by new dramas and new headlines. People who had once whispered behind my back about how Sabrina left me for a better man changed their tune once they heard about all the betrayal and deception. Some apologized, Others just drifted away, embarrassed they'd ever believed her stories. But I didn't care about any of them anymore. The last day I spoke to Sabrina was just outside the courthouse, moments after the judge declared the divorce final. She leveled a glare at me full of resentment. "You'll never amount to anything," she spat. I shrugged, inhaling a steadying breath. Maybe. But at least I'm no longer tethered to a woman who'd do anything for a quick thrill. "Enjoy your life." She looked like she wanted to slap me, or maybe scream. Instead, she turned on her heel and vanished through the courthouse doors. That was the final note of our story. No lengthy epilogue, no tearful pleas, just two people who had once loved each other, now parted by hatred and irreparable damage. I stared after her for a long, long time. Then I went home to my kids. No matter what she believed, I had won. And that was enough.